Hi, I'm Sean Williams, and I'm here to tell you about my new book, Her Perilous Mansion, which is out this month. This is it here. I'm incredibly excited about it, and I thought I'd read some of my favourite bits, while at the same time talking about how I write stories like these, just in case you would like to give it a try too. The most important thing is to use the five senses, but not the usual ones. What are they? Sight, sound, taste, touch, and smell. I'm talking about the five story senses, without which any story would just be dull, dull, dull. So let's count them down in reverse order. Story sense number 5, wonder. Now, the sense of wonder is what kicks in when you look up at the night sky and feel awe and incredulousness at how big the universe is. It's also something you might feel when you read books about magic, and this is a book about magic. It's set in a world where magic works in a way that's not so different from something we take for granted in our world, and that's writing. I'll let the book explain. Where's my bookmark? There it is. This is from chapter 4. Magic, as everyone knew, was the cousin of the written word. Books contained knowledge, and knowledge was power, and secret knowledge was more powerful still, especially when written by a sorcerer. The more frequently a spell was read, the weaker it became, so mighty sorcerers like the mightiest of all, Sophia Phronesis, hid their spells where they could never be discovered. Sorcerers sometimes stored their spells in magical libraries, either openly or hidden amongst ordinary words for safekeeping. If this house had one, Etta hoped to find it, and the source of the magic that had startled her. If it meant her ill, she would read it and dispel it. So in this world, all you have to do to be a sorcerer is write down your spell. You can imagine what kind of trouble this gets the heroes of this book into. So story sense number 4 is danger. And this sense of danger is something that the heroes of this book, Etta and Almanac, experience a lot of. They've come to a big old house thinking that they're going to be working there for the rest of their lives. Instead, they find ghosts and a magical trap that's determined to keep them there forever. Here's what happens when Etta tries to escape. A heavy weight seemed to press down on her, followed by a wave of sudden nausea. The spell. "Too late," she cried. "I'm outside." But her toe slipped on the smooth metal and gravity was merciless. Feeling herself falling, she clutched at the bag with a tearing sound, but it was perforated by the spikes, which arrested her descent with a jerk. She swung there for a terrifying breath, knowing the bag wouldn't hold forever, and if she fell from this height, it was over for her. Her feet kicked out to try to find something solid, anything at all. Sparks danced across her vision. Was that the spell too, or had she banged her head during the short drop? One foot was secure on the point of a gilded leaf, then the second. She shifted her left hand just as the bag ripped free, and for a second she was weightless again. Dazzled by the sparkles in her eyes and the roiling in her head, the best she could hope for was to control her fall by grabbing at something and hoping that this would stop the world coming up at her so quickly. She seemed to turn end over end, and for a heartbeat, all she could think about was landing upside down and breaking her neck. I won't tell you what happened to her. You'll have to read the book to find out. Now, story sense number 3 is belonging. If this house is so dangerous, why did they go there? Well, they didn't know it was going to be so dangerous, for starters. Also, home wasn't that great for either of them. Anywhere is better than home. Maybe. Here's Etta again. Regret Jacobs, known to all but her mother as Etta, was the youngest of 12 daughters. Her father had yearned all his life for a son, and on learning the sex of his last child, he had finally succumbed, alas, terminally, to lost hope. Etta knew him only through portraits and blurry daguerreotypes that showed a jowly man with a tetchy expression bearing little resemblance to the many high-spirited Jacobs women he left behind. That his dozen daughters needed futures was very much on the widow Jacob's mind. After her husband's death from disappointment, she did everything in her power to ensure livelihoods for all of them. There were, however, only so many opportunities for young women in the village and its surrounds. Other families had daughters who needed placements too. By the time Etta came of age, therefore, every opportunity had been exploited, and she found herself utterly without prospects. Almanac. is an orphan. So he too feels unwanted and unloved. And in this house, they find magic and danger, but they also find each other. A family, if you like. Story sense number 2 is justice. A sense of justice. Now, neither Etta nor Almanac have done anything wrong. They're good people. They're not mean or greedy or anything like that. That's the injustice at the heart of Her Perilous Mansion. From the moment they step into the house, things start going wrong. "They're gone," Almanac cried. "My satchel and clothes. Someone stole them." Etta recalled something Almanac had told her earlier about getting changed in a closet. "Maybe you just forgot where you put them." "I'm certain I haven't. I never forget anything." "Well, don't fly off at me. I don't have them." "I'm not saying you do." Almanac swallowed the sudden fury her question had provoked. "It's just, I had something special in my satchel and my clothes, and it isn't fair. They're all I have in the whole world." Etta had seen him annoyed before, but not angry, and she didn't like it. His ears had turned pink, and his cheeks were completely white. Now, the last story sense, or the first story sense, depending on which way you're counting, is humour. And it's perhaps the most obvious, really. Funny books are great, but not every book has to be funny to be a good book. Everyone's funny, or thinks they are, and that's an important thing to remember when you're writing characters. Here's a moment where Etta and Almanac are arguing, and they both realise that, maybe life isn't actually so bad. "Oh, that's it!" She raised a glass to throw at him, but thought better of it at the last minute. Instead, she filled the glass with water and threw that at him instead. To her surprise, he burst into laughter. Dripping wet, face still flushed from shouting, he folded over with his hands on his knees and howled with mirth. "You looked just like the mistress of the orphanage," he said between gasps, "and she's 72. "Well, thanks a lot," Etta said, "but you deserved it." "I dare say I did." He wiped his eyes and stood upright, still dripping. "We do have a way about us, don't we? I can't even remember where all that started. You said... No, I said... Oh, cranberries, who cares?" "Cranberries!" he cried, doubling over again with laughter. This time she joined him, and some minutes passed before they were able to talk without laughing again. "Where were we?" he asked, putting on the kettle for a cup of hot chocolate. And speaking of hot chocolate, I reckon it's time for me to go make one. Thanks very much for listening to me talk about the 5 story senses and Her Perilous Mansion. Stay safe, happy writing, and happy reading.